I feel like there's a huge misunderstanding within society about what an introvert actually is. People think an introvert is someone that's shy and quiet and boring and doesn't like to be around people. And I think that's a huge mischaracterization, a shallow one, about what an introvert actually is. Now, I am an introvert. I'm not the typical introvert. Our personalities, as I'm sure you know, kind of float around along a spectrum, right? Some are a little bit more introverted, some are a little bit more extroverted, but I'm a lot more on the introverted side, the more extreme introverted side. In this video, I want to share some of the challenges and the downsides of being a more extreme introvert. Because although it's not the shy and boring stereotype that some people make it out to be, there are some interesting challenges that I think people are not aware of, and I want to share that with you in this video. Even though I genuinely appreciate the way my mind has developed over my life and the way I process information, I've come to learn that overthinking is a common trait amongst introverts. And I do think as someone that's more on the extreme side of introversion, that I take it too far. My mind wraps around thoughts to the point where sometimes it's hard to let go. And it puts me in a bad place sometimes. Like when I hear about things going on in the world, like war, and I learn the details about it, or like our problem with plastics, our problems with climate change, our problems with discrimination, our problems with population overgrowth or undergrowth. I can't help but to overthink it and just play it out all the way through. And a lot of times when you play things out all the way through without the necessary information, or you take it to extremes, it's going to lead to a bad place, right? There's a lot of bad things going on in the world, and I have a habit of overthinking to the point where I change my personal state, and I get into a point sometimes where it's almost a depressive state. It's an existential kind of crisis type of state, and I do think that this is one of the downsides of being a more extreme introvert, because I can't help it sometimes. Overthinking also holds me back from being able to act spontaneously in life, because when I have a choice to make or I'm making a decision, I'm thinking through it like very thoroughly. And the challenge with that, I mean, the real problem with that is that spontaneity is important in life. It brings novelty into your life. It brings the unexpected. It brings uncertainty in your life. And I think uncertainty, well, I know uncertainty is one of the human basic needs, right? We need to be able to experience things without having it planned through. And I really tried to, when I learned this about myself, I really tried to do that when I went backpacking. Instead of planning every little detail about a 3-week trip, I'd simply just plan where I'm going and then kind of just let things flow from there. But even then, it's difficult, and sometimes it holds me back from experiencing the things in life that come through surprise. I think that's why I've always been very frugal kind of with my money, because every dollar I spend, I'm thinking through it. I'm analyzing it, and I'm trying to decide, is this worth it? Yes, it has its positive sides, but also it takes away some joys from life. I feel like I'm missing out in some ways by not being more spontaneous and overthinking my decisions a little bit too much. Even when it comes to when I initially went out with Danielle, like I invited her out to breakfast in the morning, but I overthink it too much, of course. And so I was wondering what I should say or what topics I should talk about. I didn't know what her humor was like. And I overthought it to the point that I lost my personality. And she often tells me, like, the first time that we met, it's like she wasn't sure. And the way she experiences my personality now is so different from then, because I was so uncomfortable. And I was uncomfortable because I overthought. And I overthought because I wasn't sure what to expect. So overthinking is quite a challenge for me. Something I've noticed about myself over time is that if I'm in a situation and I have to make a choice between saying yes to something, but not being able to think it through, like it's either yes or no right now, I'm gonna say no every time. Like if I'm unable to have the opportunity to think through a decision, I'm not gonna, it's dismissed right away. The reality in life is that life moves fast. Opportunities come and go, and sometimes something's gonna be presented to you, and if you don't act on it right away, it's gone, and you miss an opportunity. And I do kind of fear sometimes that I might have missed opportunities in life, like great opportunities, because I either didn't have the opportunity to think through it right away, or I didn't allow myself to think through it right away, even if it appeared like a good opportunity, because of the time constraints or because of the immediate opportunity to act. In life, there has to be a balance, right? A balance between consideration and action taking. Consideration, thinking through things, and then acting on the limited information you have and not trying to get to 100% thinking through a scenario, because it will never come. And if you try, like I often have in my life, it leads to like a certain paralysis by analysis, and that's almost never a good thing. One of my big areas of opportunity in my life is, that's a fancy way of saying one of my weaknesses, is to develop my relationship with my emotions. I have a tendency to bottle my emotions up. And on one hand, I know that's a known trait of being an introvert. But I think for me, because I've often been secluded in my life, I've lived alone for a long time. And even when I was living at home, I spent all my time in the basement. I had my own room down there, and I was usually by myself. And so aside from moments when I'm talking to myself, which I do quite a lot, I made a video about that actually, you can watch it up here, I'll link it above. But aside when I'm talking to myself, everything's just going on in my mind. And the challenge with having a proper relationship with your emotions is that it can't be bottled up. You have to be able to express them and be able to acknowledge them and develop an emotional language to be able to understand what emotions you're having, instead of just saying I'm happy, I'm mad, I'm sad. Being able to understand the dozens of different emotions and be able to accurately identify them. I actually just started reading a book a couple weeks ago called Atlas of the Heart by Brene Brown. Maybe you've heard of her. It's a great book, and so far, and it really dives into understanding emotion and the language around emotion. And I think that's going to benefit me a lot, because I do have challenges. I'm so in my head that when I'm experiencing things, it feels like such a challenge to try to take it from my mind to words, that even when I'm dealing with people, instead of expressing my emotions in those moments, I either give vague reasonings why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, that's not addressing it properly, or I just keep silent and don't address it in the first place. And the truth is, emotional intelligence is a key part of life, both expressing and acknowledging them, and it helps develop your relationships with everyone in your life. And so I know that's a weakness for me, and it's one of the challenges as someone that's more of an extreme introvert that I've had to go through. I know seeing a therapist would be a great idea, and I'm totally open to seeing therapists. The challenge for me is that I also know that all therapists aren't made equal, and sometimes the personalities really matter. And I overthink who the first therapist I'm going to see is, and whether or not we're going to resonate. And just the idea of going through therapist to therapist to therapist, trying to find one that I click with, it almost it discourages me. I've talked to Danielle about that, because she's been through that process, and it's enough that it turns me off, or at least it's like another paralysis by analysis thing, where it's like I know I'd like to do it, because a therapist is like a mentor, a therapist is like a coach. I've had coaches in all areas of my life, financially, physically, with working out, with business. So it only makes sense to have a coach to help you work through your thought process and your emotions and your perspective. And it's something I've been neglecting that I do want to make a priority, but it's been challenging. And of course, being in a relationship with someone, right? Having a life partner is going to require, you're living amongst each other. So it's going to require that you be able to communicate in an effective way. And every day, emotions flare up. Good things are happening, bad things are happening. You feel sad, you feel depressed, you feel up, you feel down. And I've just always been more of a steady. Something happens, and from bottling up my emotions, it pops a little bit. Or I'm holding emotions, and then I get really sad all of a sudden. And I imagine it's quite challenging to be the partner of somebody like me, because you just don't know what you're gonna get some days. And sometimes I just want to be alone, so I go to the room, and I imagine that's pretty challenging, because imagine if you're with your partner and you have free time, so you want to maybe watch a movie or hang out or play a game, but instead they get their food and they go to their room. That's me. Sometimes I just go to my room, and it's like I'm an introvert. I need time alone, and sometimes that even means like time alone from the person that I live with, from the person that's my life partner. And so I know for her it's challenging, and so as a result of that, it's a challenge for me to address that, to better develop my relationship with her and just my relationship with people in my life in general. And the truth is, it's not as if I'm incapable of expressing my emotions. I often do, like in videos and whatnot, and I share my feelings, but the difference is I'm able to do it no problem if I have the time and the intent and the effort. And I think the difference between me and a lot of other people is that like it takes me a lot of effort and intention to express my emotions. Whereas for other people, they may have been taught earlier in life to just do that. That's a part of them being raised as a child. So they do it so effortlessly. When they're feeling one way, they just express it. When they're feeling another way, they just express it. There's no real intention behind it because this is natural. For me, it requires a lot of intention. It takes a lot of effort. It's actually draining for me to socially express my emotions. Believe it or not, like even saying I love you to anybody it's challenging for me. It's almost a foreign concept to me. I don't even think about doing it. And so it took me a long time with Danielle to say I love you. When I say a long time, I mean like probably a couple of years. Because I have a problem with using terms and words that I don't quite understand. And the reality is in my earlier life, I really didn't understand the term like love, what it was. Even now, I'm not quite sure I understand it because like you can't define it. So I get that love is when you really, really like somebody and you're willing to do whatever it takes for them and all that. But it took me a while to be able to look at somebody and say, you know, I love you. I truly love you. And here's the problem. I overthink things, of course. And so especially growing up, I hear people saying I love you to people that they were just with for like 2 weeks or a month or something like that. And to me, it's like, I don't know. Like I feel like people use the term love, especially when you're younger, way too loosely. And I try to be precise in my speech. I've always tried to be precise in my speech. So I felt like it would be disrespectful to tell somebody that I love them if I wasn't sure that I did. And so for me, you know, I hope that Danielle appreciated that I didn't want to say I love you until I truly did. But also, I'm sure it caused some discouragement or some uncertainty, and it took a while. And the truth is, I don't feel like I grew up in an environment where emotions were expressed a lot. So part of it might be because I'm an introvert. Part of it might be because I didn't have that type of nurturing growing up. I didn't have that type of environment where I love you was said, like specifically said a lot, or emotions were expressed a lot. I grew up in a home where there wasn't a lot of emotional expression or high emotional intelligence being displayed for me to have as an example in the first place. So in general, I've learned that people that are more extroverted experience more empathy, and people that are introverted tend to experience less empathy. And that holds true for me too. I'm not very empathic. I don't have a lot of empathy, natural empathy. And I know this is gonna make me sound a little terrible to some people, but I don't have an emotional reaction based off of what someone else is feeling in their intense emotions. If someone says like, yo man, I've been having a hard time, Adrian, my mother just died. I don't have an emotional response to that. Yes, I'll give them my condolences. I'll say a few words. I'll tell them to take time and give themselves an opportunity to mourn. But I don't actually experience, like some people, if someone tells them that their mother died, the person that's listening will temporarily in their mind experience like their own mother dying and then feel some of that emotion. I just don't. I don't. And sometimes it kind of sucks because like I would like to be able to truly connect with somebody, not just in a rational way, but also an emotional way sometimes. And like I'm sure there's times where I do that, but it's more so because I'm going through the emotions and just trying to support them, which I genuinely try to do. I genuinely try to support people, but I'm not feeling it myself. So I'm sure there's a little bit of a disconnect sometimes because I'm not very empathic. And oftentimes when I'm talking to somebody about something that I am passionate about or hold a very strong opinion about, maybe it's something that's going wrong in the world. Maybe it's inequality or discrimination. It would appear as if I'm emotional about that to the untrained eye, but I'm not really emotional about it. It's just that I'm rationally frustrated. It's not that I'm feeling for people that are discriminated against per se. It's that it doesn't make sense to me. That's not right. It shouldn't be that way. It's more of a rational frustration It's not that my heart is necessarily bleeding and I'm experiencing an overwhelm of intense emotions. It's that my mind is screaming. If you have that power, you shouldn't be treating people that you serve that way. So when I talk about governments and decisions they make that's not for the people, it's not necessarily an emotional reaction. It's why are you doing that? It's not logical. It doesn't make sense. And that's kind of how my mind works. It almost feels embarrassing to express that because I know that a lot of people don't see it that way. It's very emotional where it's just like, can't you see that they feel bad? Don't you feel what they feel? And like, that's important too. But for me, it's just way more of a rational, logical, this doesn't make sense more than it's these people are hurting, you shouldn't do that. So I still care about it. I'm still very supportive and I try to do what's right, but it's just coming from a different place, I think. Almost everything for me is like received as data and information, as opposed to like emotional input, if that makes sense. And I get why sometimes people that are very introverted are viewed as being cold, because sometimes you communicate and it's just perspective, it's just information, it's just a logical perspective without the more balanced emotional aspect of it. And that's very much me. And it's challenging sometimes because I do genuinely feel like my emotional experience is dimmed. Like it's lower than other people. Like I genuinely feel that my experience of happiness isn't as intense as other people's experience of happiness. My experience of sadness is not as intense as other people's experience of sadness. So like my range, so in some sense I do like it because my range of emotion, like I'm not experiencing the low lows, but I'm also not experiencing the high highs. And I do know what it feels. I mean, I've had times where I've really felt intense emotion, but like it's few and far between. Like I remember when I was like 20, I woke up one day and like the whole day, for some reason, I was just irrationally felt happy. I have no idea why. I don't know what triggered it. I don't know how to replicate it, but I experienced it. And I do imagine some people when they wake up and they just feel happy, they feel that level of happy. And I've dabbled with psychedelics, and there's been times like through psychedelics, I've experienced the wide range: extreme happiness, extreme sorrow, extreme sadness. And so that gave me a taste of what it feels. What I imagine some people feel like on their everyday basis. And I do think I'm missing out sometimes. So that is quite a downside of being such an extreme introvert. So as you might know, introverts are essentially energized by solitude. Being alone is what recharges us. And then socializing drains us. But the misconception is that introverts, when they're around people, they hate it. That's one of the biggest misconceptions. Because I really do appreciate and I enjoy and I have a great time being around people that I resonate with and being social. It's not that my ability to enjoy being social is any less. It's just that the fact that after 2, 3, 4 hours of being social, I literally lose energy. I become drained. And all of a sudden my enthusiasm goes away, my interest goes away, my ability to interact, participate goes away. That's just the nature of being an introvert. Some personality traits you just can't change. And I don't think that will ever change about me. I don't think it's possible. I'm just wired a different way. But I do think it's a shortcoming, or maybe not a shortcoming. Maybe it's a downside of being an introvert and a more extreme introvert. Because I would love to be able to spend 7 days with a group of people, maybe on a getaway, and truly enjoy the whole time and not feel like I need to go home early or leave the party at the back door without telling anybody. because even if like when you're at a party and there's 20 people that you know, just to leave requires you to be social with 20 people if you want to say bye to everybody. So I'm that dude that like when I'm ready to leave the gathering, when I'm ready to leave the party, if there's a lot of people, I believe I might be able to get away with it. I might just sneak out the back door, jump in my car and go home. And so, you know, if I could change that, I probably would change a little bit. I'd want to be a little bit more extroverted in that sense, but I can't. And I do think being an introvert, this love of solitude, it affects friendships in a way because I don't naturally think, like I don't miss people. I really don't. Not to say I don't enjoy being around people. Like the people that I really care about, like I do care about, when I'm around them, it's great. When I'm not around them, I don't yearn to see them again. I don't find myself curious, like I wonder how that person's doing. Let me call that person. I just don't do it. I don't miss people like that. And the challenge with that is sometimes I go months or years, potentially, without contacting somebody that I view as a genuine friend, that I genuinely want the best for, that I care for. And it's not a knock on those people. It's just that I just don't think about it. Because I'm so content with being by myself. I don't think about what other people are doing. Now, maybe somebody's going through a hard time, I'll be aware of it, but I don't miss people. And I feel like I'm maybe missing out on life in that sense. I do think it's important to nurture relationships though. To reach out to people, even put it in your calendar if you're someone that's more introverted like me, and in schedule when you reach out to people and see how they're doing. Literally last night I reached out to a friend of mine just to have dinner, and it's like, I didn't naturally think about that, but I kind of forced myself. It's like, man, you really should reach out to that person and go hang out and go, groom that relationship a little bit more. And so I did. And I think it affects relationships, even like your intimate relationships. Because I know for me, sometimes if me and Danielle go out for dinner for a couple hours, or we go out for a couple hours or go for a walk or something like that, when I get home, I don't want to hang out anymore. I want to go to my room and recharge. So I even get drained through social interaction with my life partner. And that has its challenges, because maybe she wants to come home and play a board game or watch a movie or do something like that, and I just don't. I need some time alone. I can go in the room, maybe read a book, watch some YouTube videos, watch some basketball highlights, just do something that is just by myself and alone. And I know it's confusing, because there's been times where I've just been laying in bed looking at the ceiling, or I have the door closed and I'm in my office room, and maybe Danielle will come to the door and just ask if she can come in, and she sees I'm just sitting there looking at the wall doing nothing. And then I imagine she wonders, is there something wrong? Are you okay? Do you need anything? Do you want to come out? It's like, no, I'm good. I'm just hanging out, enjoying time alone with myself. And that's confusing. Like, how could that not be confusing when you don't know if somebody is feeling bad about something, or they just are spending time alone and they're completely content, and you don't kind of know how to approach it. I imagine it's very confusing. I would be confused if I was in the other person's shoes. So I get it. The love of solitude, I really enjoy it, but it does add some complexity to life and navigating social and romantic relationships. For a good portion of my life, in a way even to this day, I never viewed myself as a people person. I thought I legitimately did not enjoy being around people. And because I never enjoyed shallow conversation. When you're in school and you're kind of just like passing people and you're just kind of having chit chat with people or in class, I didn't enjoy it. When you go to the bank or you're going throughout your day, you go to the grocery store and you're just having a little small conversation with the teller, didn't enjoy it. Being at work and you're on your lunch break and you're talking to people, your coworkers, and it's just like, it's kind of just quick, brief, shallow conversation. I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy shallow conversation and chit chat. And so I thought, since a lot of your life is like that, I was like, man, I guess I'm not a people person. But I am a people person if it's the right people and the right conversation. That's what I come to learn. I enjoy conversation with substance. I enjoy conversation where I'm able to learn something. I enjoy conversation where the person I'm talking with has an interest that they're passionate about, or they're educated in something that I don't know. And so that there's an exchange, like there's a true exchange, an exchange of value, not just an exchange of words. My biggest challenge as an extreme introvert is navigating social group dynamics. Like, I'm great at having conversations one-on-one. We can talk for hours. If I'm with the right person, we can stand there for 5 hours and just talk. So I love doing that. What I'm challenged by is when there's multiple people, when you're in a group. For me, if I'm in a group of like 4 or more, I completely fall apart and I lose myself, I lose my personality. Here's why. When it's one-on-one, there's a dialogue. it's a certain dance that people understand. Like I talk, there's a brief pause or it comes to the end of my sentence, you talk, you express your opinion, maybe I jump in, and it's a rhythm that I have a good grasp of. But when you have a group of like 4 or more people, I'm completely out of my element because there's no pattern. One person's talking, another person jumps in, then he's talking over the next person, and no one's, when it's one-on-one, you're looking at the one person to hear what their thought process is or what their opinion is. In a group, it's like, you're not going around getting everyone's opinion as you're talking. And the challenge for me is, as I've touched on earlier, I do think a lot. And so in a group conversation, maybe one person's talking about something, and I'm thinking about it, and I'm reflecting, and I have a point that I want to say. And then another person jumps in, and another person jumps in, and then I'm kind of waiting for my opportunity. And by the time I'm ready to say what I want to say, someone's already took the conversation in a completely different angle, right? And it's hard for me to navigate that. And I know if you're an introvert, I'm certain that you've experienced this the same way. And it's really hard for me. It's the same with in being in school, where you have the teacher at the front of a class, and he's discussing something, and you have 30 students, and they ask a question. And for me, when a question gets asked, I go into thinking mode. I'm evaluating my thoughts and my opinions on it. I'm kind of formulating my answer. And then by the time I'm ready to give an answer, well, 3 people have already answered, and some of them have said what I would have want to say, and like the moment's lost. So for me, because some people in class, the teacher asks a question, they put their hand up right away, they get chosen, and then they think about the response. I can't do that. I'm not into that spontaneous thing like we talked about earlier. If a teacher asks a question, I think about it first, I have my answer, and then I put my hand up. And so navigating social group dynamics has been tough for me. And like going out for dinner with 7 people, I'm just not good at it. I lose my personality because I get quiet. I'm no longer opinionative. I'm no longer like verbally thoughtful. I'm not really engaged in the conversation because I don't know how to act. It's a big challenge for me and definitely a downside. I try to work on that. I do think I can get better, but it's just extremely challenging. One of the bigger challenges of being an introvert in society is that I just don't think the world was made for extroverts. The way society is integrated, it's an extrovert's world, and introverts are kind of like an outcast in society, even though a good percentage of the world are introverts. But because of that, because of the way the school systems are set up and social and work environments are set up and just the way we've developed as a society, extroverts get to be themselves. Introverts get to be themselves only when they're alone or with people that they resonate with. But as introverts, we have to put a mask on every day. When we're at work, you have to be more expressive and have more personality and be a little bit more friendly and being willing to engage in conversation. And I remember I applied for a supervisor position that I know I was qualified for and I do very well at one of my previous roles. And when I got the follow-up after the interview, I was told all my answers are great, I have a great leadership perspective, she went on telling me everything that was good about me and why I qualified for that role. The one thing that I guess you could say disqualified me from it, and the role ultimately got given to another person, was because during my free time and my breaks, I don't walk around the office and engage with people. I don't have strong enough relationships with people around the office. And for me, that kind of hurt me because when I have my breaks, it was 15 minutes. I go to the washroom, I get a drink, maybe follow up on some texts. I don't have a lot of time, so stay at my desk. But other people on their breaks, they don't eat, they don't go out anywhere. They literally will walk around the office and go see other people and just start talking. And I hear the conversations. It's kind of this shallow, meaningless, pointless conversation, to me at least. And so the fact that I don't enjoy the shallow conversations is kind of what disqualified me, which it's unfortunate. I view it as unfortunate because as a supervisor in that role, you're there to support people and train people and help people work through their challenges. I'm great at that. And my lack of desire to have social little pleasantry conversations during my little free time that I have throughout the day doesn't affect my ability to do what a supervisor needs to do. And so my point is, the world really is really made for extroverted people, and introverts have to wear a mask. I'm sure if you're an introvert, you feel like as you go throughout your day, you kind of have to put on this personality that is not really you. You have to put this mask on. And then when you get home, you're so drained, you take the mask off and you just flop on your bed and just do whatever. Like, you have to recharge. Another challenge is that I don't think, I generally have a hard time feeling like people really know me. And so it makes my relationships with a lot of people feel a little bit distant. And the reason is because I don't associate like me, Adrian, as how I look or my personality necessarily. For me, who I am is more based around the way I think, my opinions, my perspectives, how I view life. That's more what I associate to me. I know other people, they just associate themselves as like how they look and their style and maybe their interests, but that's not how I view the world. The challenge with my perspective of who I am is that people, like, I only feel like someone understands me or knows me if we have a close relationship and we've had discussions and we know each other's kind of patterns and the way that each other thinks. And the reality is just not a lot of people know that about me. My partner knows that about me. A few of my close friends know that about me. But most people I don't feel like they actually know me. Even practically everyone in my family, I don't truly feel like they know me. I do think, and this is a good thing, I do think that making these videos and having a YouTube channel helps people that are my kind of more distant friends or family members get to know me. Because through these videos, I get to express myself, my thoughts, my opinions, and my reflections, and the way I view the world. But I generally don't think in life, I don't feel like people know me. And that makes my relationships with people feel a little bit more distant than they probably should. And I'm not quite sure how to rectify that, because I don't think I can change. I refuse to identify who I am with how I look, because how you look changes. And that's kind of the problem with that I notice with some extroverts. Because I find that extroverts, I'm speaking generally, but I feel like a lot of extroverts, they associate who they are with how they look. Or they associate who they are with how they show up in life. And the challenge with that is how you look and how you show up in life changes. Your style changes. Your appearance changes. We age. And I've seen people, and maybe this is just a false relationship that isn't really there. But I've noticed that people that value in themselves only how they look and not about how they think and their opinions, as they age or as they gain weight, as their hair starts to gray, as their skin starts to get less youthful, they become depressed because everything about themselves that they value was in how they look or how attractive they were. Obviously, you're gonna age, you're gonna change, you're gonna find new ways of being in life. And so I'm not saying all extroverts are like that, but all I'm saying is when you associate who you are and your value with something that inherently, like naturally changes, you're set up for pretty extreme disappointments. And so for me, my challenge is really as an introvert, trying to feel more connected with people, even if they haven't had 30 hours of experience interacting with me. Because in my family, other than maybe my cousin, I didn't really interact with many people in a very deep and meaningful way for a long period of time, aside from when I was a child. So I don't have that very, very close connection with anybody in my family, really, speaking generally. So that's a challenge, because I do think that I don't have the family experience that most people have, where they really have a strong connection with everyone in their family. I did touch on it a little bit before, but I very much value information, even more so than I value socializing. I thought about this, and that like, if I had to choose whether to go a year without being able to socialize with people, or go a year without being able to like learn new things or stimulate my mind, I'd rather go a year without socializing with people. I don't quite understand. I don't know what my life would look like if I didn't have the ability to read books, or to have YouTube, which for me is a huge source of like learning things and kind of opening my mind, or being able to interact with people that enjoy having more out of the box meaningful, deeper conversations. Because like, I need that constant mental stimulation, and I'd rather go a year without socializing than to go a year without access to learning. Basically, I love to learn. Literally every single day, I'm learning something new. A lot of times, if you follow me on Instagram, I'm just sharing things that I find interesting, or that I learned, or that really gets my mind excited. But the problem is, like, I need it. I kind of need it. I require it. And I have no problem just being alone, like as an introvert, of course. I have no problem being alone and not having a phone or a laptop or a book with me. That's fine. The challenge for me comes where if something is taking because when I'm alone, I can think, I can be in my mind, which gives me a lot of stimulation as well. But if I'm in a situation where something is taking my focus that is very dull or boring, I'm in hell. That's why school was challenging for me too, because sometimes some teachers are just very unenthusiastic. They don't add much. They're just going through the textbook and saying what's in the curriculum to do, and they're just kind of reading from the book. That ends me. That's why I was challenged in school, because in class I learned nothing. I got good grades, but all my grades came from outside of class, going through the text myself, going and trying to understand and learn things about myself. Because in class, my focus is being forced to be on something that's not stimulating at all. And now that I think about it, that's also why I don't like small talk. That's why. Because small talk forces you to focus on something that is dull. If you're by yourself, you can focus on whatever you want. But when you're having small talk and you're looking someone in the eye and they're asking you about how the weather is and what you did on the weekend, and what the score was in a football game that you're not interested in, it forces you to focus on something that you're not interested in. And if it's just a random person that you don't really care to have a conversation with in that moment, you're just kind of there. And for me, I think it would be nice to be able to have a 20-minute conversation with a stranger at the gym about something random that's going on that I generally don't care about. But some people they can have a whole 2-hour conversation about something that they're not interested in, and they can enjoy it. And for me, I can't. And I do think that's a downside of being a more extreme introvert. It's harder for me to enjoy just having a conversation about anything with anyone. I'm not very good at it. One thing that I really learned early on, especially in regards to like my love for learning things and the relationship with interacting with people socially, is that I used to, whenever I learned something that really got me excited or I thought was super cool, I'd share it with anyone who would listen. And then I quickly found out that a lot of people wouldn't find it that interesting, or they didn't really care, or they didn't even understand what I found interesting about that thing. That became discouraging for me. And so it kind of turned me off from socializing, because I realized, man, like, I don't know why, but nobody cares about the things that I care about. No one's interested in things that I'm interested about. So I'm not gonna talk to people about it. So for a certain period of my life, I went inwards and stopped expressing things to other people. And then it was only in the last, I don't know, maybe 5-6 years where I got a new perspective on that. For one thing, social media came through. So back in the day, before it was lame, Facebook was cool, where I could share videos and share pictures, or share images or cool things that I learned. And people that liked it would comment and interact, and you can engage in a cool conversation. Instagram, if you follow me on Instagram, Adrian.Logan, you can follow me and you'll see that like I post things that are interesting to me, whether it's videos or things about animals or things about the universe, or just whatever I come across that's cool. And then people interact and I can have cool conversations, and I love that. That's how I develop social relationships. And I have a lot of cool friendships now with people I've never met, that I met through Instagram, or I met through Facebook, or I met through YouTube. I should talk about that. YouTube is the single greatest thing for me, because it allows me to make videos about things that I've reflected on, or think about, or I've come across, or that's interesting to me. And generally, only the people that also find an interest in what I'm talking about interact. When you're watching this video and you leave a comment, I can't tell you how much I appreciate that, because it gives me an opportunity to interact with somebody that also is interested in the very thing that I'm interested in. That's why with these videos, I try not to make videos that make me feel like I'm trying, that like I'm being like some people where it's just like them trying to teach people and be a guru. I don't like that. I try to make videos where it's more of a conversation. It's more of a discussion, as if you're sitting right across from me and we're just at a coffee table having a chat. And that's why it's really important to me when people engage in the comments. And so social media and the social age really helped me become more expressive and become more, like, help me enjoy life more, but also build connections more. And so now a lot of the social interactions I have throughout the day come from either people I've never met that I have connected with online, or people in like virtual reality, which is also pretty cool and worth making a video about. I want to make it clear that this video, even though it's about introverts and being an extreme introvert, this doesn't reflect what all introverts go through. It doesn't reflect you if you're an introvert. It doesn't reflect how your introverted friend or family member might feel. It just reflects me specifically. I can only talk about my own experience. And the truth is, it's hard to differentiate between what personality traits I have or what my challenges are because of being an introvert and what challenges I have just because of my own unique personality. I know I'm not really a normal person. I'm neurodivergent. I don't have a typical way of processing information, and my perspectives are a little bit different. So please don't take this as a way to generalize introverts as a whole. If you're an introvert and you've maybe related to anything I said in this video, let me know. I'd love to hear in the comments what your experience has been as an introvert. What have some of the challenges been for you? And maybe what have you done to try to get over it or to deal with it? I made a video about like what the true definition of an introvert is and giving people better insight on what an introvert is to kind of address the misconceptions that I feel society has. So you can watch that video right here. I made it so long ago, I feel like it deserves a little bit more attention than it has, because when I made it, I didn't have much of a following at all. So watch that video. I appreciate you hanging out with me. I truly, genuinely appreciate you watching these videos and interacting, and hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you in the next video.